Welcome everyone to our ad hoc budget advisory committee meeting this Monday, February the 14th. Happy Valentine's to everyone. Before we begin tonight's meeting, let us take a moment of silence to acknowledge that we are heading towards our 100th week of the COVID-19 pandemic. On behalf of council, I would like to take this moment to thank all our staff for their hard work throughout the pandemic, especially our outside staff, frontline workers, bylaw officers, building inspectors, road operators, water, wastewater operators, and volunteer firefighters who continue to show up day in and day out to keep our community safe and moving forward. As announced this morning, Ontario is moving into the next phase of reopening starting on February the 17th. With further steps being taken to ease restrictions on March the 1st. This positive news brings hope that we are moving in the right direction, but must remain vigilant. Thank you. And Councillor Gerber, could you do the land acknowledgement, please?
We have gathered virtually in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before settlers arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should only take what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Thank you, sir. And there are no additions to the agenda. So, adoption of the agenda. The clerk would read the recommendation, please.
That the agenda for the ad hoc budget advisory committee meeting as presented for February 14th, 2022 be adopted.
Have a mover and a seconder. Move by Councillor Hallman, second by Councillor Gordick. Any comments, questions, corrections, or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, minutes of the previous meeting. The clerk read the recommendation, please.
That the minutes of the following meeting be adopted as presented. Ad hoc budget advisory committee meeting, February 7th, 2022.
Thank you. The mover and seconder, Councillor Fenning, Councillor Hallman. Are there any comments or questions? Omissions, corrections? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. There are no presentations, so we'll head right into reports. We start with the proposed operating budget. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. Welcome everyone to our fourth and final meeting of the Ad Hoc Budget Advisory Committee for the 2022 municipal budget. It's my pleasure tonight to present committee the proposed 2022 operating budget. The budget follows the target guidelines that were established by committee in December of 2021. The budget before you is inclusive of a 2.90% inflationary adjustment and a 2.83% special levy for additional staffing resources. The 2022 budget continues to recognize the impacts of COVID-19 through both operating expenses and operating revenues. From an expense perspective, we continue to see additional costs in PPE and contracted services to support this current stage of the pandemic. The budget is based upon a full closure of in-person services for the month of January, which we've experienced, the gradual reopening under limited capacity in February, which we're currently in, and moving to a full or more fulsome reopening in the spring and summer of 2022. The budget also includes the service level increases, various service level increases that were endorsed by committee at our first meeting in December. As noted, those increases require a special levy adjustment of 2.83%. Part-time staffing hours were reduced in a number of areas in conjunction with the additional full-time staff that were endorsed by committee. This budget once again recognizes a continued reduction in Ontario Municipal Partnership funding. The reduction of 15% brings our allocation to just over $600,000 for 2022. However, with that, the budget also includes our transfer to infrastructure reserve funds that's provided through our dedicated infrastructure levy. The transfer for 2022 will total just over $520,000 and is critical to the long-term sustainability of our capital program. In addition to the level of service adjustments from a staffing perspective, we also included additional levels of service for artificial turf field maintenance, a new program for culvert repair and maintenance, additional costs for municipal drain maintenance, and the establishment of a SCBA cylinder replacement program. All of these new levels of service from a non-staffing perspective were covered off within the inflationary adjustment to the budget. So just a few brief highlights of the operating budget. As noted, operating revenues will improve slightly over 2021. We are anticipating rental activity levels to be 20% below regular activity levels as things pick up in the summer and fall months. Fees for development applications and other activities have incorporated based on the subdivision activity expectations for 2022. With that being said, overall operating revenues continue to be off our historical levels by about $300,000, and that's a direct result of the ongoing pandemic. Staffing costs have been adjusted based on a cost of living adjustment. Part-time staffing has been adjusted on our projected return to what we're referring to as normal activity levels in the summer months. Additional part-time staffing hours have been included within the budget for grounds maintenance at the admin complex in Castle Kilbride and new costs associated with tree maintenance efforts throughout the township. The budget includes several minor capital initiatives. These are minor in nature and are included within the proposed budget as referenced within the accompanying notes. The sum of those items totals just under $120,000. Majority of those are within parks and facilities, with just over $45,000 in initiatives, including a new duct cleaning, or sorry, not new, but a duct cleaning program at all of our facilities in response to the pandemic. Commodity pricing costs have been adjusted. Consumption is still going to be below historical levels at most facilities. The combined cost of heat, hydro, and water across all of our facilities is estimated at $660,000. The budget continues to place a priority on health and safety investments. We do have, as noted, additional PPE across all operations. We've also included the initiation of a corporate-wide job hazard assessment program. This is aligned with our efforts under the Health and Safety Excellence Program. Overall, the operating budget includes close to $74,000 in specific funding towards various health and safety initiatives and training. Finally, the budget does include a summary of our user pay operations, which fall outside the levy. The net transfer to reserve funds anticipated from cemetery operations will help to offset the existing accumulated deficit of $60,000 within the cemetery reserve fund. Building services, though expected to pick up within the current year, will still require a draw from reserve funds of approximately $75,000. Permit fees are projected, as we've mentioned several times, to increase in the coming years to repay down the existing deficit within the building reserve fund. Lastly, our water and sanitary budget is based on the Sustainable Water and Sewage Systems Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act. Water loss and I&I rates are two projections that we use to determine the budget. It is important to note that water conservation continues to be a major consideration for municipalities. And for reference, we like to point out that the average consumption per account was 261 cubic meters back in 2007. And now the average is 195 cubic meters. So we continue to see it drop due to water conservation efforts and more efficient appliances in homes. So with that, that's a high level summary of everything that's included within the operating budget. Again, I'll thank all staff, all departments for the significant effort that was put in to ensure we could reach a balanced budget for 2022 amidst the COVID pressures. And there's several notes to explain the various estimates that are in there, and staff are here to attend to any questions from committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Want the recommendation first? The clerk read the recommendation.
That the 2022 that the 2022 operating budget, as prepared by the Director of Corporate Services / Treasurer and Manager of Finance / Deputy Treasurer, be endorsed in principle.
I have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Gerber, seconded by Councillor Gordick. Any comments or questions? Councillor Gerber?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. And this may be to possibly Director Kelly, but maybe more so Director Mullenhouse. Just wondering, I believe Councillor Fisher asked maybe a similar question before, but any way to know about measurable progress on water loss and I&I? I know it's something that we continue to investigate, and maybe if I were to be able to, compare lines year over year, I'd maybe find out the answer to that myself. But I'm just wondering if either an overview or how specific can you get on progress that we might make in that area, or might have made or be making. Thanks.
Through you, Chair Armstrong, with respect to the I&I program in general, so that we have the capital component that we're digging into more details, and certainly have more plans for flow monitoring and that type of thing. So that is helpful for us to sort of isolate some of the problematic areas and to dig down a little further. It is very difficult to look at a network level, to look at your network level metrics and say you're doing a good job or not in terms of reduction. We do have some metrics that we generally keep an eye on in terms of water volumes that are used, and in terms of sewage volumes that are ended up treated in the end. And there is a bit of a high level look at it. And that's sort of been I would say, the most data that we've had in the last number of years, and sort of our metric that we chase after. However, with more I&I work and with more investigation work, we can look at that in a more detailed level, and more neighborhood sort of level, which would give us a better indication of how well we're doing. Part of the problem, I think, with I&I and with rainwater and in general, if there isn't a dedicated and meaningful work in terms of looking at your weather patterns, and looking at your flow patterns, and looking at some of the volumes received, without those dedicated resources to it, we really only can look at some of that high level data. So looking at it from a network perspective, and that's kind of where we've been, and we are shifting towards tracking it more closely, like we have with that approved capital component, and looking at that in a multi-year basis, and addressing it that way. So not something that we can chase down in terms of clear metrics right now, but certainly somewhere building towards that. I also did mention at it was the capital meeting, looking at some of the reconstruction projects that we've had over the last number of years. We know some of our bigger problem areas, and some of our bigger problem locations have been through reconstructions, and Snyder's Road is one of those locations. So we are, looking at that sort of at at an anecdotal level, and assuming that it will, once we get through the 3 to 4 year process for construction, that it will make a, an impact that we can measure. But for right now, we look at a network level, and we are looking to dig down, obviously deeper through further I&I project-based work.
Thank you, Mr. Mullenhus. Councillor Fisher.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. A question for Director Kelly. On page 17, investment income, item number 5. So I guess you're projecting a budget of 692,700 for 2022, but 2021 was 702. So with interest rates rising, shouldn't we be expecting more investment income?
Sure. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I guess I would say our investment income estimates are a conservative estimate as to where we could land. The interest rates play one factor into it. The amount of funding that's sitting within our general accounts also plays another factor into it. So as capital spending on significant projects picks up in 2022, the amount of funding sitting within our general bank account will also come down. So we've been carrying a lot of funds within there for unspent capital. Also, it's hard to anticipate the dividend and the dividend income, to come from Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro, which plays another role in that. So we've estimated it again conservatively at $370,000. I would say we're still budgeting above what we experienced in 2021, but it is really a estimate at this point in time. Once we see the full year come through and changes in interest rates, we may achieve better returns than anticipated, which would then flow into our infrastructure reserve funds.
Could I just ask one more question there?
You go ahead, sir.
Okay, and this one goes to Ms. Locke. With Castle Kilbride, do you foresee concerts returning this summer? And secondly, what are lure cards?
Through the mayor. Good question. We are looking at kind of what we call putting our toe in the water this summer to try out some of our larger events. So we're looking at doing 6 concerts and looking at potentially starting after Canada Day and just trying that out to see how it goes. And if it goes well, then we can continue on. And for lure cards, you would know it as the traditional with like a brochure. So rather than it opening up, it's just one solid card. And we have not, obviously with COVID, have been doing much promotion, and where our lure cards are usually at like the en routes and cross-border places. So we need to update the information. So do another round of that.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other questions. Oh, there we go. Councillor Gordick.
Thank you, through the mayor. Just 2 small ones, and they might be things that perhaps are more for future. So, and because they're brought up, that's why I'm asking. Probably through Director Kelly, or maybe Erica, our health and safety HR. You mentioned training, and I'm just wondering if there's any way of us knowing as council and perhaps the public, just because of some of the issues that we had with regards to our situation last year with the statues and some of the negative comments from the community in general. I'm wondering about training with regards to our staff. If there's like a report or something that can come forward with some of the programs that our staff have been involved with, so that we can see from a general public where our staff are heading and some of the coursework. And then I'm wondering about, perhaps not maybe today, not tomorrow, maybe sometime in the summer, if we can have a staff report presented with regards to concerns about safety on our sidewalks. we had a resident send a video with regards to how poorly the sidewalks are maintained in the downtown core. And residents are having to walk on the street down on Peel. And just wondering from a perspective, either from a bylaw perspective, how we can control that, because the entire street from the highway straight down to the Sobeys is unwalkable pretty much. And or if it's something that we as a township want to investigate, looking at us maintaining it. If anybody can speak to that.
Mr. Kelly.
So I can handle the first question, and then I'd probably refer to either Clerk Middleholtz or Director of Public Works and Engineering Molenhuis for the second question. The summary report of our investments in health and safety and what has occurred as far as training and development for staff, no problem. We can put that on our radar for Erica and our team to produce a report of what's been done. I can update specifically that a lot of the programs that we provide to staff don't come at a charge, which is excellent, through joint training opportunities, either through the region or other resources. One resource that went out recently to all staff was training opportunity on de-escalation techniques and how they can be utilized in the workplace. But I think it does make sense for us to put together a summary report of all those investments for council, and we can do that as part of our 2022 work plan. For the second question, I'll leave it up to, I see Clerk Middleholtz cameras on, so I'll leave it up to her to handle that one.
Can I just sort of, sorry to interrupt Ms. Middleholtz, but just to follow up on Director Kelly on that, I think part of the reason I'm also asking for that is that the residents may be interested in knowing, and especially if you said some of the programs that are offered could be at no charge, I think it would be a great resource for some of our residents to know what's available out there through any of the community programs for residents to further their training in anti-racism and other issues within our community. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And Ms. Middleholtz or Mr. Mullen.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Armstrong. For winter sidewalk maintenance, in terms of an enforcement perspective, when we receive complaints, we certainly are responding to them. Some residents will call in and advise us when these are going on. We'll visit the property. We advise them that they have 24 hours to clear it. The way the bylaw is worded, it's 24 hours after the cessation of snowfall. So once that period has passed, if a complaint is received, we go out, we visit the property, we talk to them, we try and get them to voluntarily clear the sidewalk. From an empathy piece, we do advise them of various agencies that may be able to assist them if they are unable to clear it themselves. So there are some agencies out there that exist. And coincidentally, we were discussing this just a little bit earlier today. If there is a complaint, we do require people to advise us directly. We certainly appreciate people who are getting the messages out there in other ways, but posting on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, a picture of a sidewalk that's not cleared and expressing their displeasure at that is not a complaint registered with bylaw enforcement. So it has to come to bylaw enforcement directly for us to be able to follow up on. We do not divulge where we get the information from. We're more than happy to respond to any of those calls that we receive, and we do not let anyone know where we got the information from. So we can respond to any concerns along that way or in that way. So from an enforcement perspective, that's sort of our approach to winter sidewalk maintenance. I'm not sure if Mr. Molenhuis has anything else he wishes to add to that.
Through you, Chair Armstrong, I would just add in terms of consistency across the township. I'm not sure where we necessarily would, from a staff level, propose to maintain a single segment of sidewalk. If we were looking at something like a report for service levels, We would like to be consistent in terms of how the service is provided. So if that was the direction of council for us to review sidewalks, the report would have to address, I would say, a consistent service level for the entirety of the township where sidewalks need maintenance. And I think from that perspective, that council should be prepared. If that is the question, then there will be some fleet and equipment and staffing impacts as well. But just wanted to add that note in addition to Director Middleholtz.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And further, it wasn't actually on Facebook or anything like that. It was not posted. It was a video 3.5 minutes long of Peel Street, in the entire Peel Street sidewalks, both sides not being cleared. And so when it comes to anybody walking, it isn't just one person. So it would be pretty much the whole street. So I will perhaps get that individual to send the video to bylaw, but they just, they raised the questions earlier this afternoon. And as I said, having to walk on the street is not very safe, especially when it comes to some of our seniors. And if we have disabled people not being able to access the sidewalk, Peel Street's quite long for it to not be cleared. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Gordick. We appreciate it. If ever any members of council receive any such information, forwarding it on to bylaw enforcement is the only way to ensure that we are aware of it and can enforce appropriately. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fanning.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Armstrong. I'm particularly happy to see us participating in the joint health and safety, the health and safety excellence program, because I think that will really serve our team well. And I know that with that program, we will have they provide us with badges. So I expect those will be visible on our website at some point. So looking forward to seeing that. You know, with this conversation with the sidewalks, maybe that's something when we've been looking at increasing active transportation and trails and you know, ways for people to move around the community and around the township without having to be driving a car. As part of that, I think, you know, we should start looking at what makes sense for us as a community if sidewalks are problematic. And, you know, I know we had a bit of a thaw. We had, you know, a lot of snow, then a bit of a thaw, made a lot of slush, and then now it's frozen hard. So that's going to be really hard for most homeowners to clear. Would it be reasonable? I think I'd like to ask the rest of council to support a request to staff to come back with a report saying what it would cost and proposing some ideas on what lanes, what routes should be cleared and how we go about deciding that and what the various costs would be. So I'm looking to the chair to maybe do a show of hands to ask for a report from staff.
Looking for a consensus? Well, that's three. Wish to address there, Ms. Middleholtz?
Yes, if I may, thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. This would be something that I think would be more appropriate for us to do as an actual resolution for council, for somebody to make that motion. Sounds like perhaps Councillor Fanning is considering that. So if she would like to move that, and if anyone wishes to second it, and then that can come forward.
Thank you. Yes, I will make a motion to request staff to bring a report to council proposing and laying out what the costs might be.
Okay, that's seconded by Councillor Gordick. All in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
Oh, Go ahead, Councilor Gerber.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair Armstrong. Yeah, I guess I'm just not sure exactly, like, are we asking for them to look at the cost of, I mean, Director Mullenhouse noted that, you know, we're asking for them to investigate the cost of clearing all municipal sidewalks? Or are we then asking them also to, are we giving them 2 options? Are we letting them decide 3 options? I mean, I'm not against the idea. It just seems like I'm not sure if sort of a motion in the middle of this budget consideration is maybe the best way to go about finding out what it is we're trying to find out. It also seems like a conversation, and again, I don't know if we ever got to the dollar and cents point of view, but I know we've certainly talked about it before. And I don't know if Director Mullenhouse would have any history on that as far as estimated costs we've had before, where people have said, hey, in such and such a municipality, they clear all the sidewalks. What are the expense implications of that? What are the tax implications of that? What about neighborhoods where people are quite happy to shovel their sidewalks and don't want to be taxed to have their sidewalks shoveled? Like, there's a fair amount of policy in this. So I just want to make sure that we know what it is we're asking for and not just sort of, investigate the cost of clearing the sidewalks. I think there's, we'd want it to be more focused in some way, and maybe this isn't the best time to sort of craft those guidelines. Maybe a notice of motion might be better, or an opportunity to talk with staff. Maybe a little bit of look at what happens in other places. Just a thought before we committed to an action.
If I may, that's why I wasn't putting it out there as a motion in the first place. I'd like to start the conversation, about what are the possibilities. Do we clear every sidewalk, like you said, or do we look at creating specific arterial routes that we consider, vital for active transportation, which I think is probably, that's my first initial leaning, would be looking at it that way. But obviously, Director Mullenhouse has a heck of a lot more expertise on this. And so I would rely on his judgment and his information that he can bring to us in eventually, not next week or in the next month or whatever, but some point this year to bring a report and probably have a lot more conversations before we get to making decisions about purchasing equipment and such.
Well, I think you're right. There needs to be a very thorough conversation. I'm not sure if any of you remember that at one point in time, the Baden Chamber of Commerce had a tractor in cleaning the sidewalks, and they charged the residents who benefited $50 a year for this. And it was stopped because people just stopped paying. They decided they expected it to be done, but they didn't expect they should have to pay for it. So, and it was being done by the chamber. So those are the things you have to take into consideration. And if you start limiting as to which sidewalks are being done, people are going to say, well, if I'm paying the taxes, I should be getting the same benefit as everybody else. So there's an awful lot of discussion there to have, a lot of ideas that will come out of that discussion. So yes. Councillor Hallman.
Thanks for the chair. I don't see the harm in adding a report that kind of encompasses the details that kind of been put out there. And obviously it's a long time away of this, so it doesn't have to be a pressing staff report, but when staff can work it into that, I think that it's valuable for the community also to see as a good exercise as to what it would cost the municipality and the tax base. Just like we went through the exercise with Mannheim and Hayesville to look at the sidewalks. I'm sure that will come back up again, but we've had that refresh of that data that's able to be provided to the community, and they deserve to know what it costs them and what that looks like. I think it's a good education exercise as well. So I fully support that with when staff can fit it into the year.
Okay, Mr. Mullenhouse.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to note that I would consider that to be a significant operational item for us to review. So we would need to consider that with our work program and how it sort of fits into our planned year. It is something that we if council's direction is to look into it, we can certainly look into it, but it is something to be aware of, that it is quite an undertaking to look at some of that and look at the options. And also for the impact that that will have in terms of consistency and how the service is provided across the community, because there are a number of different areas that this service is provided, and looking at, our staff complement to be able to do that, or through contracted services, it would be a challenge to balance that out with our staffing resources. It's certainly something we can look at and make some suggestions. The consistency piece is the one that stands out to me the most, as far as, just an initial thought, because if we do choose to address specific sections of sidewalk, and leave it sort of under the rest of the sidewalks in the township in terms of how they are currently administered for winter control, that being by the fronting owner, it does create that inconsistency and a bit of a challenge there, to select a few. But that being said, certainly if that is the direction of council for us to look into some of those options, we can do that and report back. We will need a good chunk of time here to look at the details there and to report back to council. And as I mentioned, it is we would consider that a significant undertaking from a public works operations and administration standpoint. So just so that council can be aware of timelines, it may take a good portion of the year for us to report back on something like that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Chambers.
Yes, I just wanted to follow up on what Director Mullen said. It is a significant increase in the level of service. If we're going to be looking at something like that, may require additional resources that were not conceived at the time of developing this budget. So what I would suggest is that staff be directed to take this away and report back in advance of the 2023 budget. And so we could present that report for consideration and inclusion in the 2023 budget.
Okay. Did you wish to make comment, Ms. Middleholtz?
Just through you, Mayor Armstrong, through the recommendation that staff has reported to reflect the discussion that has occurred here, that staff be directed to research sidewalk clearing program options and report back to council before the 2023 municipal budget, if that is consistent with the motion that Councillor Fenning was putting forward and seconded by Councillor Gordick.
Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, and just to respond back to both Mr. Millenhouse and Ms. Chambers. Yeah, I think that, and also just to follow up on what Councillor Holman said, is I think it's just people ask the questions, and us, perhaps, I understand staff restrictions because of how much time it's going to take, and I don't want to speak for Councillor Fenning, but I don't think that we were expecting it for this month. I think actually because we're at the close of winter, but this has been an issue. And as we continue to get more snow and it becomes an issue as our climate change impacts us, I think it is the residents that are actually asking for help. And we need to be able to justify to them what this help could cost. And if the residents aren't happy with that and they realize the implications, I think we need it. It's on us to sort of explain to them what's involved with some of that. As Councillor Hallman also mentioned, it's like the residents in Hayesville, there was a cost to having the sidewalks, and after they had the data and saw what the impact was going to be, there's some further discussions. I think by us saying that it's a time-consuming effort, yes, but it's also the health and safety of our residents. And as Councillor Fenning said, this is active transportation. We're asking people to get out of their cars more, and we worry more about people in their cars than we worry about people on our sidewalks. So I think that there needs to be at least some acknowledgement that what we can try to do better if our residents are asking us to do so.
Councillor Fenning.
Thank you. I'll just clarify quickly, and then I see that Director Mullenhouse has his hand up. So yeah, I'm not looking, my motion is not intended to say, ask for a fully costed and and thought out program to be implemented for next year. What I'm asking for is the beginning of the conversation, some preliminary high level concepts of what we could consider. And, obviously throwing this into Director Mollenhouse's plans for the year. I don't want to ask him to take on a project that's going to bump other things that are very important as well. So yeah, I'm asking for something very high level that starts us down the path of considering what options might be possible and how we can start to have this conversation so that we can, because it's going to take time. It's going to take staff time. It's going to take consultation time with the community. And, we're probably, I don't foresee it actually being possible to get to any kind of solid answer before the next budget cycle. But maybe, for the 2024 budget, maybe that's when we would be able to have something actually, if we decide to go down that path, pardon the pun, if we decide that that's where we want to go as a community. But I'm asking for something very high level this year, and that we would then, perhaps have something for 2024.
Okay, thank you. You didn't want to add anything, Mr. Molyneux?
Yeah, through you, Chair. I just wanted to add in and dealing with weather, I think it is important to note that, some of the conditions that, we might be seeing in our sidewalk network is very common, across many municipalities. I just wanted to note that as well. Like where I live, for example, like there are icy conditions on sidewalks, as we speak, and it is a municipality that it maintained completely by the municipality. So those are challenges, I think, if the expectation is what we would consider completely bare sidewalk in conditions like we have the last couple of weeks, that might be a sort of an unrealistic expectation in general. But that being said, we certainly are, with council's direction, we certainly are open to reporting back on some of the options for winter maintenance and winter control.
Okay. Councilor Gerbert?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Yeah, so again, I'm not really sure. I mean, if Director Mollenhouse feels like he knows what he's being asked to do, I guess I'm satisfied with that. But from what we originally sort of voted on quickly to what we're discussing now are two different things, which is why I maybe thought that maybe a quick conversation with staff, maybe notice a motion next meeting might sort of really start us on a path where we all know. Where staff aren't sort of trying to read our minds as to what they should be investigating. I think we all agree we want some ballpark data and figures on things. But if Director Mollenhouse feels like what he's heard tonight and the vote that occurred sort of sets him off in a direction he can handle, I'm okay with that because the motion already passed actually.
Yeah, I think basically what we're looking for is that we can get a large ballpark figure as to what the cost would be. As Councillor Fenning has said, that starts the conversation, and then it can be broken down from there as to where we want to go. So I think that's where we should say that that motion has taken the move, is to, as Councillor Fenning said, start the conversation. So if we get a ballpark figure and then we can break it down from there as we ask, but then people know where we're starting from and where we can figure out ways to kick back. But then the kicking back from that overall large amount would be the discussion with the residents. Councillor Hallman.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm going to just summarize my expectation is that an overarching summary could simply even include just a couple of surrounding municipalities on what 25 feet looks like for them in a downtown core area where people are trying to access business operations. To me, that would be good data to get the conversation going. So I wouldn't, it just kind of keeps that piece of information coming. I'm not sure if Councillor Fenning can nod if that's kind of what she was alluding to, or if it was something more detailed, because yeah.
If I may, I'll just reiterate that, you know, what the clerk had down as really does reflect, I'm looking for high level. I'm not looking for, you know, a fully costed budget of what it's going to cost and what equipment we need to purchase. You know, I'm looking for, you know, here are some of what other municipalities have done or are doing. And as Director Mollenhouse already said, you know, where he lives, he's familiar with what that looks like. So that's one municipality that he could reference. And just, you know, that beginning conversation, laying out what it is that we need to consider, or how, you know, again, the consistency, like Director Mollenhouse said, you know, what are the challenges with picking certain routes to be cleared versus other routes, you know, and I don't know how to frame, and I'm not sure that we can frame a more detailed motion until, you know, the directors had some time to actually look at this and put together something that we can actually discuss. It becomes you know, like I said, the beginning of the discussion. And whether that ends up including some sort of a ballpark budget estimate or not isn't, to me, important. Those details are not, you know, those specifics are not as important. It's about more that, you know, right now we're throwing out all kinds of things, and if we have some kind of a high level report of ideas and what exists to start the conversation from, I think that we can have a much more productive conversation about whether we go any further with it.
Ms. Middleholtz.
Thank you, through you, Chair Armstrong. Before Council responds to what I'm about to say, Mr. Mollenhuis may have more to add, but I just wanted to advise Council as well as the Chair. At this point in time, we've had a mover, we've had a seconder, we've asked who was in favor, we asked who was opposed, and then at that point in time, this discussion, this clarifying discussion began. So we haven't actually passed the resolution. That hasn't been affirmed yet. So I just wanted to advise Council of that. Thank you.
Mr. Mollenhuis.
Through you, Chair. If we were provided a motion from Council that we'll say generally reference the levels of service on winter maintenance and reporting back, you know, before the 2023 budget process, I think that's something that we can work with to you know, to get some detail in front of Council and you know, summarize some of the options that are out there. And we would look to present some information from a consistency standpoint, just in terms of how the service could be provided or potential other options for service, but not get into too many specific details. Certainly if we had something that was general and referenced, like I said, levels of service for winter maintenance and reporting back, you know, before the 2023 budget process, then we can work with that.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think the motion that Councillor Fenning put forward, I think that's the one we're going to go with, because she's asking for a high level. Mr. Gerber.
Yes, thank you, through your Chair Armstrong. Yeah, I believe whatever the motion was, there was a mover and a seconder, 3 hands in favor. So, and now we're just continuing to talk about what we want the motion to look like. I mean, to me, we sort of settled it, I don't know, 20 minutes ago, that we were going to have them look at sidewalk stuff. I didn't think it was specific enough, but that's okay. Director Mollenhouse seems to know what direction he's going in. That's sort of my take on what I've seen.
Thank you. Ms. Chambers?
Thank you. Just to clarify, Ms. Middleholtz, could you confirm the motion that is on the floor for council's sake, please?
Yes, that staff be directed to research sidewalk clearing program options and report back to council before the 2023 municipal budget.
I believe Director Mullenhouse said that he can work with that. So, you know, having the discussion this evening and you know, confirming that it will address levels of service for sidewalk winter maintenance, we can work with that and come back. So we have 3 in favor. Perhaps now that we've had some clarification, if Chair Armstrong could call the vote again and see if we have concurrence to move forward.
That's my intention, yes. So we shall go. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. There are no further questions on the proposed operating budget. Councilor Gerber.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair Armstrong, just to follow up sort of on the point, the question that Councillor Fisher had asked. Councillor Fisher was talking about, you know, the potential of rising interest rates on sort of on the positive side of revenue. Just maybe a comment as well on the potential for rising interest rates on the negative side of borrowing. So maybe Director Kelly, if you'd maybe just want to summarize sort of where we might be on that and what steps we might take to sort of maybe benefit from one and mitigate the effects of the other.
Good.
Go ahead.
Okay. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Thanks for the question, Councilor Gerber. Yeah, I think monitoring interest rates is something we've been consistently doing, both locally at the municipality and across the area treasurers group, as we all grapple with a challenging environment from a financial planning perspective. With the township entering a stage of debt requirements for some large scale capital projects, this is why we had put initiative within the capital program for a debt management strategy and reserve fund strategy. When looking at the interest rate markets right now, which are relatively low and expected over the next several quarters to increase, we might want to consider whether taking on the minimum debt requirement to get through 2022 makes sense, or whether looking at taking on debt for the next couple or few years while the interest rates are low is something that would be advantageous to the municipality. That's a big part of that project, to see what strategy, when it's peer reviewed by someone external to the municipality, to bounce ideas off of, we should have a better idea. I can also report that we are, as an area treasurers group, having a presentation this week from BMO Capital Markets just to discuss the current interest rate market and some of the projections moving forward, which will help with that debt management strategy.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, so no further questions. The recommendation was read. We have a mover and a seconder. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So the next item is the municipal budget package. Mr. Kelly.
Sorry. Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. This report encompasses the entire budget process that we followed to date, starting back in December with establishment of guidelines, reviewing the results of 2021 operations, endorsing the 2022 capital program and 10-year capital forecast, and just tonight endorsing the 2022 operating budget. As we entered into the budget process this year, we were clear from a staff perspective that this budget would not be an easy one to reach a balanced budget from. I think every department with the leadership of our CAO and corporate leadership team took the necessary steps, finding cost containment measures or revenue enhancements where possible to help us to balance the budget and stay within the target guidelines that were provided by the committee. So the budget package as a whole will see an estimated impact of $78.63 on the average residential property owner. Review of general levy increases from across the region of Waterloo indicates a range from 1.9 to 4.69, excluding any special levies or infrastructure levies. As noted, this budget continues and staff appreciates that council recognizes the importance of infrastructure investments, continues our strategy of a dedicated infrastructure levy to put funding directly into those reserves for future capital needs. And this budget, if approved by committee tonight, will be presented at open council on February the 28th for full approval, and staff are here to attend to any questions you may have.
So have the clerk read the recommendation first.
That the 2022 municipal budget, as prepared by the Director of Corporate Services / Treasurer, be endorsed and recommended to council on February 28, 2022.
Thank you. Have a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Gerber, Councillor Hallman. Any comments, questions? Councillor Gerber.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Armstrong. I would simply like to certainly thank Director of Corporate Services, of course, all in his department, and all of the people around the table at the corporate leadership team, and also all their staff as well. These are certainly challenging times, not just economically, but in many ways. And to be able to work through this process with all of you in this environment, and, you know, it's just been great to see you know, the quality of work that staff continue to do. You know, the services we deliver, the manner in which they're delivered, you know, the manner in which things are detailed and explored. So just again, it's you know, looking at some names and faces and titles and things like that in the screen, but just a big thank you to all of you, and please pass that along to all of the people who aren't necessarily on this call, who have also played a role in helping us you know, get through the budget process and get a path charted for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gerber. Certainly, I know I support everything that you've just said about staff, because they certainly deserve that. Ms. Chambers.
Thank you. And I just wanted to reiterate what a great job staff did. This was my first budget process, and I really wanted to compliment Patrick and his team on how efficient things went. But as you said, there are a number of people on the screen tonight. We may not see their faces, but I had several meetings with them throughout the process, and the insight that they were able to provide me into operations and how well the township is running was really beneficial. And I just wanted to thank them for a really great process and all of the hard work they did to get where we are today.
Thank you. Yes, and they have been very hardworking, and through other conditions over the last couple of years, it's been very tough, and I'm extremely pleased and proud of the work that they've done. So thank you. Make sure you spread the word. Councillor Fenning.
Well, I'm going to echo the thanks and, you know, everything that Councillor Gerber said, support that 100%. I think, you know, this, as hard as it's been, it's a budget that serves the community well, and that is investing in what we know the community wants, and balances the needs with good service. So thank you very much. And as the mayor and Councillor Gerber already said, please pass the thanks to everybody on the team.
Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, first of all, Appreciate the thanks and the recognition that it is a team effort to make this happen. I think a piece of that team that didn't get mentioned in the comments so far is council itself and the trust that you put in our staff team to bring this budget together, and that we're taking the steps necessary to ensure we're hitting the strategic priorities of the municipality while remaining fiscally responsible. So the support from council in continuing our historical practice with this budget and hopefully moving forward is greatly appreciated and makes the process a lot smoother on our end. So I just wanted to make sure that gets noted.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that very much. Okay, so we'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And a final recommendation to be read by the clerk.
That we do now adjourn to meet again at the call of the mayor.
And that is moved by Councillor Fisher, Councillor Gordick. All in favor? Thank you. Job well done. Have a safe evening, everyone. And again, happy Valentine's.